Forgiveness is freedom. Freedom from being stuck in our past and freedom to walk into a brighter future. On the other hand, unforgiveness can erode teams, relationships, and our ability to experience joy. Well, my guest today, my mentor, knows about the power of forgiveness. It unlocked incredible success in his family, his business, and his leadership. I couldn't be more excited to share the wisdom of Charlie Watkins with you today. Let's jump in. Welcome to the Intentional Leader Podcast, a place to be refreshed, renewed, and encouraged as you lead yourself, your family, and your team. I'm Cal, and I'm really excited to have Charlie Watkins on the show today. Charlie is my mentor and one of the wisest individuals that I've ever been around in my life. He's been incredibly successful in business and in all the important areas of life. He's the CEO of Landmark Media Enterprises and Dominion Enterprises and the author of the brand new book, Throw No Rocks, A Man's Guide to Success Through Partnership with God. This book is available now for pre-order on Amazon if you want to go to Amazon now and pre-order it, and it will be officially released on September 10th. Every time I sit down with Charlie, whether it's over lunch or over coffee, I just can't get enough, and this conversation was no different. We ended up going for an hour and a half, and I didn't want to edit anything out. I didn't want you to miss out on his wisdom, so I'm trying something new. I broke this up into two different parts. Part one is going to be about the power of forgiveness. And then part two is about waiting on your dream and his top advice for leaders. You're not going to want to miss part two. In fact, I made it available right now so you can listen to these back to back. Without any further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Charlie Watkins. All right. Well, I am so honored to have Charlie Watkins here on the podcast. Charlie, thanks for being here.
Really excited to be here, Cal.
Charlie's a Naval Academy grad. I'm a West Point grad. We've kind of worked through our rivalry, except for probably one day a year. But Charlie, you've been such a wonderful mentor to me. And we've had many lunches where you've sat with me, you've let me ask you all these questions. And I am so grateful for your mentorship of me. And I'm so glad that I get to share you with this audience. And I'm so grateful that you've come out with a book, Throw No Rocks, that we'll talk about. And anyway, Charlie, I just want to publicly thank you for mentoring me and for sitting with me. I know you're a busy man. You're a CEO. You're a husband, a father, a grandfather. You are very active in your church. You're very in our church. You're very active in the community. But every time that we are together, one of the many qualities that I admire about you is your ability to be present. And so thank you. I just really enjoyed our time together.
You're very kind. It's my delight. And if I could have been where you are at your age, I could have really been something, I think.
Well, I think people will see today that you have accomplished a lot and you've done it in a really beautiful way. So Charlie, I want to jump in. So it's 1982. You are on I-95 North. You're heading up to Washington, D.C. You're around the Richmond, Virginia area, and you're going to meet with the Chief of Naval Operations, which is a big position. For those that aren't familiar, that is the top position in the Navy. That is a position that's on the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And you're going for a very specific purpose to meet with this high-level leader. And this high-level leader is your father. So Charlie, tell us what you were doing that day and give us a little bit of the background and some of the lessons that we can pull from that story.
Well, thank you. It's a powerful story and it had a big impact on my life. And I was a sort of a brand new Christian. I had just left the Navy after my 5-year commitment after Annapolis. And a couple of pastors who were teaching on forgiveness and sort of called me out on forgiving my father. And so I did that. And then they said, well, we believe you need to go to him and ask for his forgiveness for your attitude towards him. And that's an additional step, isn't it? And so Blythe and I considered that and we said, yes, I should do that. And so I was headed up to Washington. He was the Chief of Naval Operations at the time, a very busy man. In fact, his schedule was so booked in advance, you can appreciate this, Cal, because you're an Army officer, that I didn't even think we'd get an opening.
Hmm.
His schedule was so booked in advance, including weekends with time slots all the way through, typically 6 to 8 months out, with many commitments even beyond that. And so we prayed for an opening, and I called him and I told him why I wanted to come. Not exactly why I wanted to come, but that
What
I
did you
wanted to come
say?
see him.
Do you recall what you actually said to him as to why you wanted to come?
I didn't tell him the full reason. I said, I just want to talk to you.
Okay.
And he said, I remember on the other side of the phone, he called, my mother's name was Sheila. He said, Sheila, get the calendar. I mean, this is 1982. You know, there's no
Middle of the Cold
internet.
War. I mean, he's got a big job.
He's got a big job. And he said, well, I can't believe this. Are you sure, Sheila, that's canceled? Okay, well, Charlie, we got an opening Saturday afternoon from 1 to 2:30. Can you make that? I'll be there, Dad. So that Saturday, I drove to Washington and I rehearsed my speech over and over again. And it was a very short speech. And the speech was, Dad, please forgive me for the bad attitude I've had towards you. And then the key instruction element was throw no rocks. In other words, I didn't say, well, Dad, you've been gone a lot, so I'm kind of ticked off, but yeah, I'm sorry. No, I didn't say, Dad, you were absent from all my sporting events. It was throw no rocks. It was taking ownership for my peace. And it was a very specific instruction. And when that piece of instruction was given to me, I knew exactly what these pastors meant. So the way the day went was I abandoned all the possible outcomes to God. Blythe and I prayed about that because this was a serious, busy man, and he wasn't used to dealing with things like this, things more touchy-feely. This guy dealt with world defense issues, worked for President Reagan. He was very involved in the development of the Strategic Defense Initiative, Star Wars, if you will, with Caspar Weinberger. He was intimately involved with that development of that whole program. He was very, very occupied by big things. And here was his son coming up to say something personal. So I didn't know how it was going to go. And I really mean I didn't know. All I knew is I was going to stick to my script. I was going to say what I came to say. I was going to leave the outcomes to God. And I wasn't going to throw any rocks. And when I arrived, my mom and dad were both there. It was at Quarters A, which is on the Washington Navy Yard in Washington, D.C., where the Chief of Naval Operations has quarters. They met me at the door, gave them both a hug, came in and sat down. I could tell my mother was already getting upset because she anticipated, maybe because my siblings had done so. I have 5 brothers and sisters. I don't know. But I think she thought I was going to unload on him. And so she left in tears before I even said anything to my father. And that was a little unsettling, but okay. And I just looked at him and I said, Dad, I'm sorry. I'm here to ask you to forgive me for my bad attitude towards you. And you know, Cal, I'd only seen my father cry one other time in his life. And that was when his mother died. And we happened to be home at Christmas, during Christmas leave when I was at the Naval Academy, a couple of years before that. And he wept. He loved his mother. And he cried when I said that to him. And when he composed himself, he looked at me. I didn't say one more word. He looked at me and he said these words, which I'll never forget the rest of my life. He said, Charlie, this is a good thing you've done today. And that was the end of the meeting. My mother came back in. We hugged each other. I got back in my car and I drove back to Virginia Beach where Blythe and I lived with our 2 kids. And it was powerful. And it was transformative in terms of the relationship.
Well, Charlie, thanks for sharing that. There's so many things I want to unpack just in this powerful story, and it gives me goosebumps just hearing you talk about it. What do you think that did for him? And then I also want to hear what that did for you.
What did it do for him? It's a really good question. I think that it probably touched who he was truly as a potentially great father. But he was gone. And it's hard to be a father when you're gone, even if you're doing noble things. And maybe I would say it's almost impossible. It probably is impossible without God. But he was truly gone. He was gone 20 of the first 30 years of his marriage at the height of the Cold War. He was a submariner, and we would get one letter per 6-month deployment. And we loved our dad. When he would come home, he was so great, and then he was just getting busy again to leave again. And so I think for him, I think why it was emotional was because it tapped something maybe he wasn't even in touch with in his heart that said, I have 6 children. This is my oldest son. And wow, this thing about being a dad is a big deal. That's what I think. I don't think it was deeper than that. I think it just tapped something. And maybe deep down he knew he was on a roll and the years had gone by at this point and there was really nothing he could do about it or something like that. I think as it relates to what it did for me, it just unlocked all sorts of things. And it, excuse me, it changed our marriage. I mean, that was the first time I really left my mom and dad in a healthy way and really was able to sort of what the Bible calls leave and cleave to my wife. Our marriage changed. My confidence level changed at work. I wasn't looking for my dad's approval the same way in what I was doing at work. I memorized Bible scriptures easily. The Word of God came alive to me. This relationship, this partnership with Jesus was just so much more alive. And what it really did for me was began a process of a healing heart that would take many more years, but it gave me a real hunger for it. Like I liked this feeling of being free and released from bitterness. It was a good feeling. And I use the word feeling intentionally because it was different. I sensed a different level of freedom. And so it had a profound effect on me and our marriage. And we did it together. Blythe and I had prayed about this. This was a rejoicing kind of a thing. And it wasn't like the next weekend, we were buddy-buddy going fishing together. He was still the chief of naval operations. There was a level of civility that came into the relationship, a level of maturity, and I think probably a level of respect. So, in fact, I'm sure it was. And so the relationship never again went negative for the rest of his life. And he died in 2012. That's a lot of years.
Yeah.
So it was a big deal, but it was really a beginning of a series of events and breakthroughs in my life and that's why I led with it in the book as the title story, because it was a breakthrough kind of a thing. And throwing rocks would have been a disaster that day. And I didn't know if throwing no rocks was going to work.
Yeah.
But I believe it did.
Okay. So we're going to come back to talking about your dad, because I think there's a lot to unpack with the tension that he experienced with work and a desire to be a good father. So we'll come back to that. But let's talk about forgiveness, because forgiveness is something we probably don't talk about a lot in like the leadership context, but it's certainly something that probably all of us need to deal with at some point. There's that quote where unforgiveness is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. It sounded like, so I want to unpack this a little bit for you, Charlie. It sounded like you had already forgiven him for absence. Is that right? Before this throw no rocks, like you had kind of gone through a process of forgiving him?
Absolutely. That was critical. And I was counseled that way. And the information I was given was, if you go in there having not forgiven him, this will blow up because you won't be able to hold that back. You need the spiritual power of forgiveness in your own life first in order to seek to apologize properly.
Yeah, to truly apologize. Because you hear like the apologies that are like, hey, I'm really sorry for how that made you react. Or, it's like those fake apologies, which I think anyone listening to this story could say, Charlie, you have total justification to go in there and throw some rocks, because you were one of 6 kids. Yes, he was doing great things, but he made a choice and he wasn't present, and he kept choosing that over and over again. We'll unpack more of that, because I know there's tension there, and that's a hard thing to do. But this is like flipping it upside down, and I'm sure that's one of the many reasons this had such a big impact. Like, you did not go up there to throw rocks. Like, you genuinely, I guess, felt like you had done something wrong that you needed to be released from. So can you just unpack, because you mentioned like that this was by you asking for genuine forgiveness, that there was this kind of release that happened, and then all of a sudden your marriage started to improve significantly, your work life, your leadership, your business life, like all of these things started to. So any sense on what happened? Like how did this one act of asking for forgiveness for your attitude start to unlock some of these other areas of your life? Like how do you explain that now?
Well, I can explain it on a spiritual level. This is a Christian book. There are certainly secular parallels to all these lessons, which are valuable. But on a spiritual level, I will explain, I believe I know exactly what happened that day. There was a stronghold. The Bible calls it a stronghold. It's a position of power that someone occupies. You can think about it from an infantry perspective, in an army situation. And you've got to take that stronghold out, or you're never going to get to achieve your objectives. Well, there was a stronghold in my life because of unforgiveness. I was angry with my father. I was wounded by my response to his absence. I cannot remember as a boy not missing him. It was very powerful. He was not only gone, he was revered, loved, almost worshipped. He was really fun when he was home a little bit, because they then go right back to work and being home at 9 o'clock at night from the Pentagon and other things before he was preparing to go back to sea. So we didn't get much of him, but what we got, we loved. Unless we got a little too close, and then we kind of goofed it up, and then he would get impatient, and then we would be wounded again. It was just a pattern of not enough easy dad-kid time. It wasn't there in our lives. So I think that the power of breaking a stronghold on the spiritual level occurred that day, that was significant in my life, and I believe in his. We had a unique relationship after that compared to my brothers and sisters. And I don't say that to judge any of them. I love them all. But my relationship with my dad was different. It was professional. It wasn't childish or kidding around or sarcastic or making fun or goofing off. It was about real stuff, and it was civil, and it was nice. So I think the breaking of a spiritual stronghold in the physical realm with those words of forgiveness, the actual words being spoken out loud face to face, was the breaking of something that was evil and wrong. And that freed up an open space in my heart for God to fill with confidence, assurance, a kind of faith that says, hey, we could go forward in life. We can do great things. We can do good things. The transformation in the marriage thing was enormous. I was really stuck on not leaving because I didn't have this approval from my father that I was
I see.
seeking.
You were you not leaving your family. I see. You were not able to kind of establish yourself as a new man. And at this point, you already had a couple children, right? You had
Yeah.
2 children. Yeah.
82. We were married in 77. So
Yeah.
we were 5 years into our marriage. I loved my wife tremendously, but I was still so needy of my father's approval. This just fixed that almost overnight. It was just it was a breaking. In other words, so you're up against a ceiling, you break through. Yeah, there's more stuff to do. There's more work to perfect it and make it better. But the basic elements of forgiveness are powerful because at the spiritual realm, they just solve all sorts of problems. Because you see, God doesn't hold us responsible for what other people do.
Yeah.
He holds us responsible for our response to it.
That's
And
so powerful.
when we respond in anger and in unforgiveness and hatred, even if justified, whatever that means, it won't work. You'll stay stuck. So I've counseled many men since 1982 to do exactly what I did, to throw no rocks in the way you do forgiveness at work. If you got time for a quick story,
Yeah, please.
when I took over I've been the current job I'm in, I've been in since October of 2018, the CEO of a conglomerate called Landmark, a very old, historic, family-run company based in Norfolk, Virginia. It's an iconic, terrific business. And when I took over, I had about, 12 or so direct reports, maybe 13. And I had a meeting with all of them in the conference room on the 19th floor. And I had a number of things I wanted to tell them to try to set the record straight, introduce myself again. I'd been in the company for 20 years at that point. They knew me, but I'd been in a different part of the business. I was now the CEO. And I ended the meeting by doing a little exercise I do with people sometimes. I said, I'd like you all to look at me and say something to me out loud together. I know it'll sound corny, but just do it for me. Humor me. And they all smiled. I said, just say these words. I forgive you. And then a couple of them didn't do it. And I said, no, you down there. Do it again. 1, 2, 3. And they all said, I forgive you. I said, okay, I just want you to know, I have taken all those 13 tickets and I have placed them in my pocket because I will offend you. I don't intend to offend you, but there's no way we can live together, work together, and try to do the enormous things we have to do in this business over the next few years with me not bugging you sometime to the point where you're upset with me, you're mad at me. And I just want you to know, I just got my get out of jail free card that I'm going to play back to you, and then I'm going to ask for a new one in response. And so we've had some fun with that through the years, and to a point where one time in a meeting, someone was looking very irritated. I said, I won't use the person's name. I'll just say, Bill, do I need to use one of my? He said, yeah, I think you do. I said, okay. In other words, living on a level of forgiveness is also a reality in the workspace. It's a reality in teams. It's a reality certainly in families. So,
yeah. Friend, I hope you're enjoying the episode. I want to take 1 minute to tell you about a product that I just created that I'm really proud of, and I think it can quickly help you get true clarity in life. In our 21st century social media comparison FOMO world, it's never been harder to cut through the noise and prioritize what matters most. But if you can get crystal clear about your deepest desires and how you want to spend your time, that clarity is a superpower in the world that we live in today. And that's why I created the Discover Your Core Values mini course. In this short on-demand course, I walk you through a proven process to help you discover your unique core values and how to make them practical for daily life. This course will make decision-making easier. It'll give you more courage, and it's going to help you have more peace as you say no to things that are not your highest contribution. And you get all this without having to buy a bunch of books or pour out your soul to a bunch of strangers. If you're interested, you can get immediate access at calwalters.me/course. There you can purchase just the course, or for a very limited time, you can purchase the course and a one-on-one coaching session with me. This is a great way to invest in your future. I hope to see you in the course this week. Now back to the episode. That's super helpful. And I would just encourage, I'm doing it right now myself. I'm just thinking about things that I have probably either not asked for forgiveness for, even little things, or I have not forgiven others for. And I think what I'm hearing in your story, Charlie, is taking control over what you can control. Like you said, you can't control what your dad did, but you can control how you respond to it. And there are, I think any of us hearing this would say, okay, a lot of the reaction, the anger, the frustration, the bitterness is justified, but what is it doing to you? And how is it serving you? And it's interesting when you think about how that was not serving you at the time. It was keeping you trapped in this place. And then when you took that act of genuinely asking for forgiveness because you had accepted that you were doing something wrong, that your attitude was within your control and it wasn't the way that you wanted to show up, all of a sudden now you were free. I hear freedom to now pursue the fullness of what kind of God was trying to bring you into. And then also a beautiful release for him, probably of some things that he had been holding on to for a long time. So let's go back to your dad, because I see a lot of myself, if I'm honest, in your dad. And obviously I think I would like to think that I prioritize my family to a significant extent, but there are still those moments where I am feeling that conflict between work and family life, work and family life. I would imagine all the leaders listening have felt that tension. Some of us navigate it better than others at different seasons. And the last thing I'll say before I get to the question is, I know that you now spend and have over the last decades, you spend a lot of time investing in leaders. You teach them a lot of the wisdom that you've learned over these last several decades, and you've put that in this book. So what are some of the lessons that we can learn from your father in terms of how to better balance ambition with family life? Because he was succeeding at work. I mean, he was crushing it at work. He was at the top of his game. He was doing, and by the way, he was doing it in a profession that's very noble. And he was clearly very service oriented towards his country. But he was, I mean, I hate to say it, but it sounds like in many ways he was failing at home. He was not succeeding with his children. He was not present the way you guys needed him to be. So what are some of the lessons that you teach leaders, and especially men? I know you have a big heart for men, when you think about his struggle.
Well, I think it's really quite an excellent question, and it's been a learning for me. One of the things I learned early on was, and I wrote it in the story in the book, that his father died while he was at the Naval Academy. So that'll sober you up when you're judging your father for his life, and then you realize, oh my goodness, he lost his dad when he was a college sophomore. He talked only a few times about his father, but very, very with great affection. So what does that do to a man? So I think the first thing that I would say is, in viewing him and understanding him over the years better, was that he was also a broken man who had an absent father. And so let's start there and offer a little bit of mercy. And so I began with that idea. I have to tell you, another man, a friend of mine, a close friend of mine, when he knew about this story, he said something to me that I didn't even appreciate. He said this. He said, "That was really good of your father to forgive you." And I almost was like, whoa, wait a minute. I'm the guy who was wronged here. And then I remembered, throw no rocks. I'm not going back there.
Yeah.
And as time's gone on, I've started to say, you're right, because he may not even have, the Lord might have disarmed him by the way I did that, but he may have not even been aware that there was anything going on. My mother was a master at sort of keeping all the plates spinning, and another group event, and she was a quintessential Navy wife, and she was a very positive person, and she was always, she was very big on how things appeared. So it's possible he knew very little about what was really going on at home, and even was encouraged by her father was a Navy admiral, was a World War II destroyer guy who was gone for 3 years in the Pacific, and also a Naval Academy graduate, my mother's father. And so I guess I just developed over the years just a whole bunch more mercy for if you will, the cards my dad was dealt. I think the reason it was so difficult was that he not only was succeeding at work, he was not only crushing it at work, as you said, he was really well known in Washington for his unique combination of brains and integrity. And Washington, although many people, their listeners, may not know this, it has many brains, but it doesn't have that combination in lots and lots of places. And when it does, it's uniquely known. He was known that way. So his children were growing up with almost this icon. Yet he was a humble man. He didn't care about money. He cared about service. He dealt in the currency of power. And he was a remarkably gifted man. He had enormous capacity. He only needed really sleep about 5 hours a night. He had a tremendous pace about him. So you can tell, even the way I'm describing him, you say, well, how could this guy not be pursuing exactly what God wanted him to do? And the answer to that question, people ask me that all the time. Well, should your father have gotten out of the Navy? Should he have done this? I said, I'm really not in a position to answer any of those questions. All I know is what happened, and all I can take responsibility for is my response to those events, my response to those interactions. And I think the equation for men who know God and have a relationship with him, a partnership with him, is very different, because I think you'd have to turn off the voice of the Holy Spirit to pursue a life. You'd have to either listen to the Holy Spirit to do it, or if he wasn't wanting you to do it, you'd change your course. Because my dad, 25 plus years later, had deep regrets. Deep regrets. And that, to me, was the saddest part. I was over me. I was over being mad at him. I'd forgiven him. But he was sad. And so we had an interaction on our house at the Eastern Shore in 2005, and he came down for a weekend with his new wife. My mother died in 1996 from cancer. Maybe this is about that time frame, yes. And he was leaning against the rail. Beautiful sunset, banging off the water, lovely Eastern Shore breeze. I mean, it's a paradise of a place. It's so unique. Seagulls cawing, the day kind of ending. The light on his face revealed deep wrinkles. He looked tired. he turned to me unsolicited and said these words. He looked very thoughtful. He said, Charlie, if I had known the toll it would have taken on my family, I wouldn't have stayed in the Navy. Now, this does not mean that my dad didn't do great things. It doesn't mean any of that. I'm just telling you what he said. I think I believe, I know I have brothers and sisters today don't even believe that's true. Well, I was there, and he said it. And this is a guy who we never saw look back. He didn't pause looking in the rearview mirror ever. He was moving forward and driving. So what do I tell men today? Listen to God. Pursue the things that you're doing for the right reasons, because you're wired that way and God made you that way. That's why identity is so important, as we've talked about, Cal. You got to know who you are. You got to know what your gift to the world is, why you're supposed to be here from a work perspective. If you do that well, and you honor your wife as the way Christ loves the church, I don't know how it'll get done, but it'll get done. God will see that your kids are okay. God will engage you the way you're supposed to. You'll get a heart for them to change your priorities on your free time. You'll play less golf. Sorry. I don't know what it'll look like, but he comes through when our desire is for that next generation. And he comes through when our desire is for that marriage. And so I don't have specific answers for people when they talk to me about my dad. I mean, I don't ever have anybody come up to me and say, boy, your dad was a jerk. Yeah. I have people come up to me and tell me he was the finest naval officer they ever met. That's all we ever got.
Yeah.
All the way through his death and afterwards, that's all we ever heard. All we heard was this kind of praise. So the way the kids deal with that, flips over to the other part of your question. The way a family responds to that is, well, this must be okay. This must be something we should just get used to. This is just something we have to get over, because this is special and he's got these gifts. And so it makes it doubly confusing when somebody does things well and then also does them with great integrity.
Yeah.
So I'll stop there, but I had a better solution to the problem. But men, be true to yourself and listen to God, and your kids are going to be fine because you're going to engage with them.
Charlie, even just hearing you kind of talk through your dad, it just highlights again that like defining success is so important, because he is a success, was a success, but just by his own definition towards the end of his life, where he's saying, I have regret. He didn't say I have regrets, but he's talking about regrets. I think it just highlights for me how important it is for us as leaders to not be successful at the thing that doesn't matter to us the most. And sometimes that's hard to tell. So I'd like to shift now. So tell us a little bit about your heart for men, because I know you work a lot with men. You work a lot with men at our church. Tell us a little bit about what you're seeing with men and kind of your heart to help men. And by the way, I know your heart and I know my heart. When we talk about men, we're not in any ways trying to put down women. We want to elevate women and we want to elevate men. But obviously, I know you have a particular heart for men. So talk to us a little bit about where that comes from, you think, and then also maybe some of your observations as you kind of coach men and help lead men.
Well, thank you. It's become an increasingly bigger and bigger honor for me to be allowed to speak into men's lives. And of course, I learn a ton from them as they're allowing me that privilege, which is really a precious privilege, because men are generally more closed and with their thoughts and feelings than women are, sure. But I focus on men because I feel like men have this unique switch in them. And it triggers when they hit some break point. I've had so many men over the years come to me and say, look, I got this, I'm stuck with this, this is blocking me. Just tell me what to do. You're successful, Charlie, just tell me what to do. And it's a little bit of a joke, but they're dead serious. And so when I find men like that, I find that most of them are asking questions that really revolve around identity, authority, purpose, mission. Sometimes they involve information. They're just off base a little bit of something, but most of the time it's deeper, and they're just really off track in something very basic with God's model. And so where my heart for them comes from is my own experience, and the fact that I have, over about the first 8-year period of my Christian walk, I had some magnificent guys come into my life, some very accomplished men who spent time with me and taught me things and coached me. It wasn't intentional. I didn't have a manual to follow and say, oh, now I should go get, blank person to feed me this. This is just the way God orchestrated it. And over the period of that 8 years, he enabled the establishment of what I call a platform or a strategic platform of assets that he put in place in my life that really accelerated my growth. They changed my trajectory of my family. They had a big impact on me. And so what my heart for men, since I have been profoundly helped, I can't communicate to you the degree to which my life has changed. I have been so profoundly helped that I have this compelling overflow of interest in seeing men who are ready and asking to see them free and on a pathway of transformation. So the business of doing these things, putting these assets in God's hands, developing a proper sense of identity, putting ourselves under authority, developing the skills associated with fighting for our families, spiritual warfare, and such. These things are learned skills. They have a beginning point and they have a mastery over time. And my heart for men is to get them started, to get these things, help them get these things in place, because I know that it will take years to master them, but just the establishment of them brings a partnership, aliveness, an engagement, a vitality to their relationship with God and their wives and their children that will just begin to reinforce the beauty of this and the rightness of it and the confidence that they're on the right path. So I think my heart for men is just, I've been helped. And I know what I did that I had control over that put me into a position for God's best, his will, his, what we call in the Bible, our inheritance in Christ, what we were made for, what we actually love to do. And one final point, this business of talent that people have, especially with men, I believe especially with men, is often hidden beneath wounds, unforgiveness, hurts, offenses, anger, you name it. And that keeps a cap on things that are unfortunately are essential for us to walk in our inheritance in Christ. And so I emphasize that in the book, that saying, I want to talk to you about the hidden talents. I'm sure you have X education, Y money, Z this, you're winsome, you've got this, you've got this, you've got this. What about that? And the reason I go there with men who will allow me is because that's what men did in my life. And one simple example, my parents moved 32 times in a 37-year Navy career. 32 times. I wasn't in all those because I graduated from high school and went to college in 1972, but I made 10 school moves. My oldest sister made 12. Some people's lives are tougher, some are easier. That's not my point. My point is we had a lot going on, and getting some things settled in my heart and not just always being on hold for the next thing, which was the way we sort of responded to this endless moving.
Yeah.
And my mother made it exciting, and a lot of it was fun. And sometimes we went back to the same place we went before. And so I'm not trying to put a big negative on it. I'm just saying that it required some adjustment. And so the whole business of men is, how did you respond to the pressures and the forces of your life? And here's what I've found. I've been in leadership a long time now. That's what happens when you get old and you're a leader. You get to say that. I could not have done the jobs I've done if I hadn't gotten myself healed over my responses to all those moves.
Yeah.
Because the response I had initially to those moves was, I'm lost. Relationships don't matter because they're just going to say goodbye soon. You don't even have to say hello. Just join in with a new sport. My sport was swimming. I would join in. I would join the swim team. I was competent. You just keep moving on. If you apply that to life as a mature adult, you don't get very far. And you find out that the very things that God was wanting me to learn from those experiences were things like resilience, adaptability, changing environments, changing cultures, lots of different kinds of people. Well, welcome to leadership. But you don't see it when you're angry or you're not forgiving. But after you do, you say, oh, is this what you want to use this for, Lord? And so the very gifts and talents a man has hidden are often, almost always, required for him to see his highest and best life with God.
Charlie, I remember when I had the opportunity to come and speak at the church in just like a small group setting. I was going to be talking about community and small groups. And I remember just as I was talking to some of the pastors at the church that we both go to, and they were like, Cal, you have to meet Charlie. And they started telling me about you. But the thing that they kept talking about, it wasn't just like, hey, this guy is accomplished, which you are. You're very successful in all arenas, in business, financially, family, health, all the things. But there was something that they were trying to describe. It was like, there's something about him that is unique. Like he has, I think what they were trying to say and kind of what they were saying is he has wisdom. And it's not like a wisdom that you can just read a book and get. It's not just wisdom you get from just being old. I'm not calling you old, Charlie, by the way. It was something different. It was something different. And I see that when I just hear you talk. And so I guess I just am really grateful that you do have a heart for men, because men are not doing well. I mean, not all men, but even just Scott Galloway. I know he's been recently talking a lot about the increased suicide rates, increased loneliness, just failure to launch, especially for this newest generation of men. So I just think it's really important for there to be people of wisdom like you with a genuine heart that have kind of walked through your own stuff, and you're not afraid to share your own wounds and how you've walked through that. But I just really appreciate you and your heart and what you're doing at our church and in our community. Well, friend, thanks so much for finishing part 1 of my conversation with Charlie. I really want to encourage you to go check out part 2, which is available right now, where he and I talk about waiting on your dreams and how to wait well. He also gives his top advice for leaders If you enjoyed this conversation, please share it with a friend and make sure you subscribe on YouTube or wherever you're listening to this podcast. And one way that you can really help me out is by rating this show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It only takes about 30 seconds, and it really helps me reach new leaders and helps me bring on incredible guests in the future. One quick application question for you before you listen to part 2 or you head out. Is there someone that you need to forgive? Or is there someone that you need to ask for forgiveness like Charlie did? Forgiveness might be able to unlock a new level of freedom in your life and in your leadership. Thanks again for being here today. I love and I appreciate you. Remember that life is short. Let's go make it count.